Hi, how are you today? This chapter, as you can see, is about developing new strategies. All new strategies concern changing a hope into a reality. However, there's great variety in the nature of how this is done. It could be just a thought, or it could be a formal document. New strategies can be from just an incremental change, something pretty small, to a major break with the past. And they could range from recovery to domination. There's a number of triggers that seem to herald new strategies. One is the appointment of a new chief executive. Such a person will normally be anxious to, as they say, make his mark upon the company, and a new strategy is certainly a way to do that. Or it could be there's a great opportunity has arisen, or maybe the performance of the company has been poor, or there could be some sort of leadership issue or management issue, or worst of all, it could be that if a new strategy isn't developed, the company's going to fail. There's about 5 strategies that companies can pursue, and of these, the most important and the one most favoured by managers and owners is growth. It's easy to see why, because the rewards from growth are so great. The others, speedily, are hold, harvest, that is, just deliberately let it run down, don't put any more money in, divest, and recover. There's a number of ways we can plot new strategies, but this, in my opinion, is the simplest and the best way. It is the Ansoff matrix, which was developed in the 1960s by Igor Ansoff, who said there's only 2 types of markets, existing ones and new ones. And in terms of products, there's only 2 types of products, existing and new ones. And depending upon what you're doing, there's really only 4 strategies, which are market penetration, market development, product development, and diversification. And of those 4 strategies, or those 4 quadrants, by far the riskiest is diversification, because you're furthest from familiar ground. Let's look at each of them in a little more detail. The first one, market penetration. This is the simplest, it is the lowest risk, and it is the most natural one, where companies do more of the same with the same products. And 2 generic strategies, high volume, low cost, using low price, or differentiation, using a premium price. And although it could be said it's the lowest risk, there are risks in not adopting a new strategy, and there are risks in adopting a new strategy. Let me give you 2 examples. Here's Marks and Spencer's in 1997, 98, profits of over 800 million, and within a few years down to 2.8. A lot of people were of the opinion it was because it didn't change its existing strategy. Gallagher Group feared in 1970 that the long-term prospects for tobacco were poor, so it diversified into all sorts of things for 23 years and then returned to tobacco. Number 2 is market development, where the company develops new markets. This could be, for example, on the basis of geography, like IKEA, or it could be on the basis of new segments within existing markets, such as, for example, computer gaming. This is higher risk than number 1. Number 3 is the development of new products, which again can be done in 2 ways. The enhancement of existing ones. Ford regularly revamps its models, or the introduction of completely new ones. For example, the Ford Kuga in 2008. Once again, this is higher risk than strategy 1. Number 4 is the riskiest one of all, and it is called diversification, and it can happen in 2 ways. It can be organic, where the company uses its own resources, or it can be through acquisition, where the company buys another one. And in both of those cases, there are 2 types, either concentric or unrelated. Let me illustrate concentric. When Ford introduced the Ford Kuga, it was related to existing products, so it had a similar centre to its circle. It was concentric. Easy Group has diversified out of the airline business into hotels, unrelated. The same arguments can apply to acquisitions. Here are the motives that managers tend to have for acquisition. A lot of managers are very keen in acquisition because the rewards are so great. I'll not go through all of those, there are too many in this podcast, but you can read them in greater detail in the book. One of the features of today is failure. So no podcast on new strategies would be complete without considering, first of all, the causes of failure, and secondly, what to do about it. The causes of failure tend to be internal rather than external, actually. And the first one comes from the board, the senior management in the company. The second one, again, an internal one, is a major strategic error, getting into a project which is so big. And the third internal one is bad management of some of the functions, perhaps finance, perhaps marketing, perhaps production. And the fourth cause is external causes, where something is wrong with the market. Once again, I'm going to look at each of these in a little more detail. If you have a very dominant chief executive officer, it tends to be the case that he gets his own way and there is no balance in the discussion. It's particularly acute, when the chief executive officer is also the chairman of the company. It really just gives too much power to one individual. We can also have poor boards where there's a small caucus of people, perhaps 2, perhaps 3, and they decide absolutely everything. Or the board is supine. It just goes along with what the chief executive says. Or maybe it's unbalanced. It doesn't have people representative of all the things that the company does. Maybe it's loaded with a particular type of person. Too many scientists, perhaps. Too many accountants. Too many people in marketing. Or the board can be ignorant. It doesn't know what it's doing. And finally, we can have the diffusion of effort, that a common complaint of many board members is they have so many things to do that they can't do any of them properly. Another internal cause is to make a big error in a big project. And here are two, the Channel Tunnel and the Airbus. I know the Airbus still hasn't run to completion yet, but both of these are major projects which have caused immense financial difficulties for the principals. Or it could be a major acquisition that goes wrong. For example, one of the worst of these was the UK company Marconi, which diversified out of defence into electronics and ended up with nothing. We can have functional causes as well. For example, poor financial control, overtrading, poor marketing, poor production. And finally, in terms of external causes, it can be market failure. That's there's something wrong with the market. There's no market for the product, or perhaps there's a very high degree of market concentration where, say, 4 majors have 95 or 96 or 97% of the market, or indeed the firm's competitive position becomes so poor that it just can't compete. In terms of recovery strategies, generically, these are they. Early action, change the top management, difficult to achieve, as I'll show on the next slide. Increase the revenues, reduce the costs, reduce the assets. Changing the top management is only easy in a classroom. In real life, it's fraught with difficulty and very, very difficult to achieve. But whenever it happens over a period of time, these are the stages that tend to occur. Stage number 1, there's a death-threatening crisis. The firm is in such a big crisis that it's going to go bankrupt. So a saviour is brought in, and this saviour enjoys a honeymoon when he can do all sorts of things which were denied to the previous incumbent. How long does that honeymoon last? I've put down 100 days, maybe a year. But the new chief executive, the results should be apparent fairly soon. There are 2 possibilities then. Either the firm is saved and it engages in new patterns of behaviour, or it's not saved and it just reverts to the way it was, and then a new saviour is brought in. This is a difficulty because how many new chief executives can a firm have? A lot of people would say about 2, and then there's not much left. There is a summary of the causes of failure and recovery strategies. It just remains for me to thank you for listening to this podcast, to hope that you enjoyed it, and to hope that you will listen to some more. So goodbye, and thank you for listening. Goodbye.